Okay, so Michelle Kern back again, and today we're going to go over the second stage of working on the UDU project. And I have let my base sit out for a little while. Overnight I had it wrapped, but I had it wrapped loosely so air circulated in there. So let's take a look and see what we got today. Okay. So I've got a piece, as we talked about yesterday, still got a little flex to it, but when I put pressure on it, it's not as likely to feel like it's going to be crushed if we put weight on there. We don't want to go crazy and put all of our slabs on there at one day. We're probably going to do about 3 inches of progress a day, and that's about all the clay will kind of stand up to before it starts to collapse under its own weight, which we do not want. So let's take a look inside here. Okay, let me see. We got a little imprint of the crease of the plastic there. It's on the inside, so I don't really have a lot of concern for that. But if we do want to kind of work out some of those blemishes, you can take your scraper or just a slightly moist sponge and just briskly sand in one direction and just kind of buff those out. Okay. If you have any cracks or deeper wrinkles, you probably want to take some slip, actually work a little slip in there. And if it's really creased, you take a little coil of clay, slip it in there, and just kind of spackle it. Okay. So this is pretty level. Looks pretty good. It's on the bubble there. So if you have any places that are, there's a hot spot. Okay. So that direction, it's not as level. Let's see. Okay. Okay. I know on this side it's a little shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and raise that up a little bit. So I've got a little piece of slab here, some slip. Okay, it's not super crucial that it be level. It's just that if you have one side that's like 1/4 of an inch lower than the other side, then your slabs will start to be uneven as we build up the sides. And that's okay if you want an organic look to it. If you want something that's a little more polished looking, that might make it tricky. I'm going to just take this little scrap here. Okay. Just gonna work him on there. So make sure you're still slipping and scoring everything, even when your clay seems fresh. Okay. Just polish that on there. Okay. There we go. And I can blend that later when I'm blending my coil strips. Okay. So I've got some clay already rolled out, and I do have some strips already measured, but I will show you just quick and easily what we're going to do here. So we've got a bag full of pre-cut ones. Here's a fresh one I just cut. When we put these on, we're going to slip and score them on so they stand on the rim of the base. And just like we do with the coil technique, we're going to add them to the top of each of the last ones. Okay, so we want all of these to be of a consistent width. So if you have some that are 1/2 inch, you have some that are 1 inch, some that are 1.5 inches, it's going to be like a stair step kind of ziggurat as you build up to the top here. So it doesn't really matter how long they are this way. Most consistently, you want to keep this width. When I rolled it, I made it a similar thickness to the base. Some people use wooden shims when they're rolling by hand. I usually just eyeball it to get that thickness. Okay, so to measure these out, I am going to make each one an inch high. So I've got a straight edge line here that I've already cut. I'm going to start with my 1 inch mark at the end there. If you've done any sewing, this will be obvious to you, but sometimes people haven't really worked with a ruler. So I know probably want to just go over this a little bit. So make a mark at the 1 inch mark. Take that straight edge. Okay, so before I cut, I'm just going to score a line there. Let's look at the other end. That's an inch. Okay, good. So we'll just go ahead and cut that out. Okay. Okay, so once you get one measured out, you don't really need to measure each one. I use my first one as a template. Match up the ends there. And then just score a line. Get a lot of them. And then after I've cut these out, I'm going to store them in the plastic bag that I have here. So you don't want these drying out as you're working. You want these to stay fresh. You only let them start to set up a little bit once you've applied them to your UDU. Okay. But I'll get enough to work with today and tomorrow, so I don't have to keep doing this. Okay. There we go. It doesn't matter if they're straight on the ends or if they end in a little bit of a angle like this. So we're going to be slipping and scoring them together because they're not all going to go all the way around. Okay, so we'll leave those out for now. Put that to the side. All right, so we've got our slip tool. Okay, just check and make sure that's a place we can see the camera. Yep, looks good. Okay. All right, good. So now we're ready to apply our slab coil strips here. Okay, so first, before I score and slip that on, I'm going to look and see how much I need to go all the way around. Okay, let's start with a longer one here. Okay, we need a few pieces here. The other thing I want to think about as I'm doing this is what pitch I want the angle to be, because I'm going to make kind of a oval. So if I just did this straight up right now, it would kind of look like a, I don't know, kind of like a bean shape probably. So I want to bring these out a little bit so I get a nice bowl shape. So I can tell I'm going to need some more. And I'm angling these out towards me. Okay. Okay, so we've got a little dart there we need to fill, a little space here. That's kind of nice. I've got these already kind of cut at an angle. So let's measure on the inside, give myself a little more than I need. Okay. So I can patch that in there. Get a little triangle for the other end. Okay. A little thinner. Good. There we go. Great. So now let's put these out where we can reach them in a bit. We're going to take our slip. Be pretty generous with your slip, especially when we're working on the bottom of the piece like this, because this is where it's going to be the load-bearing area of your drum, I want to make sure there's enough slip down there, gripping everything together, because if the weight shifts while you're working on the taller parts, that can crack the bottom. So we want to make sure this is good and secure. I've got my slip mixed up fairly thick. I know some people like to thin it down, but honestly, I kind of make mine the consistency of slightly melted ice cream. Okay, so I'm going to take that and carefully place it where the rim is there. I'm rotating this around. Okay, just pressing that together. Not worried about the seam right now. We'll blend that in a bit. Okay, so let's just get our pieces on there. Get our little chunk here. Slip it end to end. So I'm just pressing them a little bit. I'm not pinching very drastically because I don't want to make these too thin. I want them to stay about the thickness that I rolled them. If you do have little voids, you can kind of pinch in there, add a little shoop clay like that. Okay, so add this one on. That should be okay. Maybe we don't need a little triangle. Okay, so let's slip this one. Slip the ends. Press those ends together. Gently press that down. I'm slightly angling it back to the same pitch as the other pieces. Okay. And I ended up with a little extra, so I can just take that off. Let's fit together nice. Okay. So now, before we start going crazy on blending, I'm going to see if we can take a look from the top here. Okay. So hopefully this will show up in the camera. I'm just looking at the circle and I'm making sure I don't have anything like that. That's kind of an exaggeration. But if you've got like one flat side, one round side, come in here and just try to get them as symmetrical as possible. Obviously this is going to be an organic hand-built piece, so we don't need it to look like a machine made it, but we don't want to end up with a spot that looks like it had a bad hair night. Okay. Let's put these aside for now. I'm going to put this on my board. Okay. Good. Let's go ahead and blend the outside. Okay. We have one of those Cheryl mud tools. That, of course, is the perfect tool for this. As I said, I forgot mine at the studio. Get a little light on there. Okay. So I'm just going to use my hand. I'm going to go ahead and brush the clay on the fresher part of the slab over the seam very gently. I'm not pressing too hard. You can see I'm bracing the piece from the back here so I don't crush the lines and warp it. Keeping my round shape. You don't need to get this smooth and polished the first day. We just want to get it so that seam is filled and blended. Okay. You can always do refinements afterwards. But you don't want all these pieces to dry, because if it gets to be leather hard and that seam is still showing, it's a lot harder to buff out. Okay. So we're just dragging that extra clay from the upper coil, slab, ribbon, whatever you want to call it, down across the seam, and that'll fill the seam. Remember, you're bracing from the back, so don't be just going poke, 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 poke like that, because that'll warp your shape. A little extra clay. Okay, blend that in there. Okay. The nice thing about using this technique, as opposed to the coil technique, is that it's really quick. So if you ever dive into large scale sculpture, this is a good way to build up really quickly. Okay, so just take a brief look at the inside. Same thing. I want to brace it from the outside now. Get those lines welded together. And that'll keep them from shifting as we put more coils on. Okay. There we go. So the more raked out you do the angle here, the less height you want to put on there. So if you're going to make, I'll probably do one more row. We'll do that together. But I wouldn't want to try to go out and do like 5 inches at an angle like this, because the clay is just going to be too wet and flexible to hold itself up. So if you want to do something that's a more pitched out angle, you can only add a couple of these rows a day. Okay. Now, got a few more here. Okay. So I want to continue my angle. Okay. So I'm moving those on there, and you can see if I went like this, that would start to create a straight side here. I want to keep this a little rounder, so I'm going to bring that out a little bit. Okay. That'll make a nice rounded belly. Obviously, in the later video, I'll show you how to start closing it up. But for now, I'm just going to do a couple of these, so this won't be too long. Okay. Also, the wider your angle there, the wider the circumference of the piece, so the more strips you'll need to go around. That's why I don't really pre-measure the length of these, because you're not really going to know what you're going to need until you get there. So it's better just to kind of patch them together, trim as you need.